Hello, I'm Pastor Ari Mattson from Christ Our Savior Lutheran Church in Sussex, Wisconsin, and welcome to AfterWords for October 23rd. This past weekend, I preached on Matthew 22, where Jesus is challenged and asked, what is the greatest commandment of all of them? And Jesus replies that it is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and the second is to love your neighbor as yourself. As I was preparing for my sermon, one of the things that I was thinking about was the fact that this is very much what Jesus is about, and this is very much what Jesus does in his life here on earth, that he demonstrates what it means to love God and to love neighbor by loving all those that he comes in contact with, loving those that are unloved by society, loving those that are valued by society, that his love is for everyone that he comes in contact with. And so in a very real way, Jesus is saying, be like me, that we are commanded to be like Jesus. Now, it's easy to say, it's a great goal, but one of the things that I'm constantly reminded of the fact is that I'm not Jesus, and I never can be Jesus, as much as I may try. And therein lies one of the real paradoxes that we have as Christians, that we are called to be like Jesus, but at the same time, it's a goal we can never quite attain. And at the same time, it's a goal that we should still strive for, even though we know that we can never quite get there. I find that a really kind of interesting paradox that we're in. And it kind of struck me that very often I tend to want to go to one end of the extreme, that I either think that I really can be like Jesus and I do everything possible to get it all right, and then get really down on myself when I'm not, or I tend to be really down on myself and think that it's just never possible, and why should I even bother or try to be good, because I just seem to mess up all the time. And somehow it's about finding that space in between. There was a theologian that I heard talking once who talked about being a Christian is kind of like walking down a path and trying to avoid the ditches on either side. That very easily we can get into one way of thinking that leads us towards falling off the path in one way or the other, and being too down on ourselves, being too high on ourselves. Both of those are ditches, that somehow we are to recognize that we're human and we're imperfect, but at the same time, we're still loved by God. And one of the things that really kind of came to me as I was thinking about this, and especially thinking about this greatest commandment that Jesus gives us, is that, the command to love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and our neighbor as ourselves, is a great one. It's the most important one. It's the heart of the entire message of the gospel, and yet it is something that we can't totally do. And therefore we have Jesus, who goes to the cross and dies for us and says, you're loved no matter what. And it's easy to also take that and say, well, since I'm loved no matter what, then I don't really need to do anything. And that's the ditch on the other side. And so the thought to take with you is, don't fall into either of the ditches. And those days where you're really high on yourself and think that you're great and everything's perfect, remember that the law, the commands of Jesus are there to remind us that other people are as important to God as we are. And those days when we get down on ourselves and think that we're worthless, that the cross exists to remind us that we are as important to God as others are. And that we walk the path in between, knowing that we and everyone else are imperfect, but loved by God. Thanks for taking your time to listen and watch. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time on AfterWords.